Hello everyone. Zephyrs here. I was making some updates to the Trinity Reave Warden, and I thought I'd give you guys an update. It's looking pretty darn good right now. We're still using the 2 tinctures. I did get rid of increased effective mana burn on the tinctures. So we just have increased effect, weapon speed, increased effect, elemental penetration. The other bit that I changed with the tinctures is in the passive tree, we are no longer going in this direction. No longer using this wheel, which was a very powerful wheel, but couldn't get the points to stretch there. And then I found this wheel, which has actually worked out pretty darn well with some unique flasks. So we'll go ahead and get into the gear first. So as you saw, the tinctures have changed. Rumi's concoction is the same. Starlight Chalice is new. So we have increased effect of non-damaging ailments. That helps us get to 30-30 Scorch. It also helps us get to 50% shock and enough chill to make them deal very little damage. We have a inflict fire, cold, and lightning exposure on nearby enemies when used. So that's very helpful as well. It probably is the least helpful out of everything in this flask due to the fact that we have double scorch and other methods of reducing elemental resistances. An addition that's a little strange here until I explain the whole build is the Jade Flask. So previously I was using an Armour Flask. The Jade Flask with the suffix rolled for Evasion is extremely important for this build now. I'll kind of explain that. It's just about layering defenses, but I'll explain it later. So we're still using Stygian Vice with whatever jewel fits in here. So if you need like stats or something or some extra bits, or if you don't need anything, then you can just go pure damage in this. The boots are quite important. So we have suffix rolled for increased effect of non-damaging elements. Again, that helps us reach 30-30 Scorch. Very important. And then, chaos, resistance, move speed. The implicit that's important here, actually both of them are important. Drops brittle ground while moving. So this adds to our elemental ailment count, which adds to our effectiveness of the taming. So it is quite important to use that. And then the second implicit that we have here is 20% chance to avoid elemental ailments. And why I find that that's very important is because I ran into a modifier while playing this build that I had either never paid attention to or never encountered before. I'm not sure if it's new this league, but Reflect Elemental Ailments is extremely deadly to this build. When you get hit with your own 30-30 Scorch, Chill, and Shock, all of a sudden you become the squishy little little boy. So this build has incorporated ailment immunity for that specific reason. So that is definitely necessary. Now, for the brittled ground, what you want to do while you're fighting, so you'll be reaving, basically just whirling blades and whirling blades. And that will give you brittle as you're fighting. So it's pretty easy to apply. boots are necessary. I was using tailwind boots before. The loss of speed is sad, but this is well worth it. A unique shield, which I think some of you might be cringing about. Yes, we are using Fallen. Unfortunately, there's not much of an upgrade past this. I was using a block shield before this, and it was working pretty well. And then I switched to Lucky Block, and I don't think I can go back. It's extremely tanky with this. You'll see in some of the gameplay footage. So obviously we have the taming. One important part about the taming is that you want to quality it for elemental damage modifiers. And you want to get this base roll as close to 40 as possible. Otherwise, pretty simple. We're using Maryland's Fallacy still. Another thing that you want to do with this one is, even though it seems counterintuitive, you want to increase the critical modifiers because that increases our critical strike multiplier. I'm using a basic Armour Evasion chestplate, and I'm going for no life modifiers on here. So we can increase the defensive capacity of this and also get more life from the tree. Just have general spell suppression on here. This ring is not necessary, but you can roll elemental damage attack skills ring, or you can switch this out for like just general chaos resistance, whatever fits your build better. And I kind of hate Betrayal, so I don't have the correct enchant, but if you get the -7 mana cost to skills, it's better than this enchant. Pretty generic sword. I got this one for 3 divine, but before I was using this one, I was using the Rebuke of the Vol, and it's perfectly fine. The only problem is that it's slower, so you feel a little bit slower. It's not too bad though. It's definitely doable, and this one is pretty cheap. One interchangeable item here, it depends on your playstyle. I use Blizzard Crown because I hate dying. But you can use Replica Abysses. I just find that you have more one-shots slipping through your defenses, because eventually you're not going to block, eventually you're not going to evade, and then you're going to get hit by something. This build doesn't really have the capacity for a bunch of max res, so I find that just using a Blizzard Crown is plenty of added damage. Like, we don't need to be too greedy with it. But if you want to, you can be greedy and you can use the Replica Abysses. Might be hard to fit some like life and spell suppress into the build. Also, if you're using Replica Abysses, I like Blizzard Crown with +1 AoE gems. That increases our determination, our anger, and also our Tempest Shield. So we're getting more spell block from it as well. Just seems better to me. The gear changes, pretty simple. I did incorporate a little bit of ward into the build, so you see I have 555 ward. With the flask, I think I get 700. Yeah, 765. So that's another buffer to my health. It's nice to be there. It's not necessary. You can certainly use like an armor, pair of gloves, or whatever you want to do. Onto the skill tree. We'll start with the Ascendancy. Pretty much the same deal. We're going up into Oath of Summer. Double Scorch is extremely strong. And then Unbound is extremely strong. Tinctures are extremely strong. So we are going to use this node and then a combination of 2 nodes. So the first 6 mana burn applied have no effect on you. And tinctures deactivate when you have 12 or more mana burn. This means that we get the maximum effect out of this, and we get 6 seconds where these are not active, but their effect is applied. And then they have an 8-second cooldown, so we have 2 seconds in between where our tinctures are not activated. And I find that that's perfectly okay. I'm sure there's a little way to get those 2 seconds, but I really don't care. I don't notice that much of a difference. There's a point where my damage drops down a little bit for 2 seconds, and then it goes back up. It's really not that big of a deal to me. We're taking the nodes down, and then we're going into ailment immunity. That is the primary reason why we are taking this. Because having your own ailments reflected at you is incredibly devastating. Then corrupted blood for flavor. This wheel is important. This wheel will net you more damage up here for increased effect. However, using this wheel and having your flasks in between your regular flasks allows for constant flask regeneration. So that is quite important. Sorry, I skipped over the implicits on the chest. We need melee fortify, and the second modifier here is not necessary. However, going with the flask generation, I just selected flask charge every 3 seconds. We are using Impossible Escape to go ahead and go over to this node for reduce effective curses and chaos resistance. Then we grab these for flavor. Reservation node, pretty general. We go down into the cluster jewel, and we have some sort of defensive offensive options. I like precise retaliation because almost always the second line is in effect with our build. Increased chance to block, increased damage if you maim a target. The war cry is important, and it's not important for exerting an attack. The war cry is important because it's going to intimidate, and it's going to grant us onslaught. So this cluster jewel is extremely important. Without it, you're going to have to probably not be ailment immune, use intimidate on block, and then on onslaught, you'll have to craft it on your boots. And then the small cluster jewel is quite important if you don't have access to enough funds for the cluster setup. You can anoint this inexonerable over here, and it will give you the same effect. It's probably a little bit cheaper than the cluster jewels that I've set up, but the problem is you'll run into mana reservation efficiency issues. So that's the cluster jewel. We go into the block node. We're taking extra spell block here. We get endurance charges on block, which is kind of substitutable for this one. So if you already have this node and you don't really care if you have 100% uptime on your endurance charges, which it's pretty darn huge. Let's see. So, like, if we look at the maximum hit here, if we don't have endurance charges, we lose 3,000 physical maximum hit, which is kind of crazy. One other thing with those is, where is it? Where's the shield? Right here. Oh my gosh. Uptime on your guard skill is also incredibly important. So you want to make sure to increase that duration as much as you can. I have this here. There's also a wheel here that can increase guard duration. So you can take some from like damage nodes and put them into here if you have a problem with maintaining it. But maintaining your endurance charges and figure that out later. It's a configuration issue. It's not the build issue. We should have about 20,000 Fizz max hit here. But I just imported in the character, so I'm assuming I'm missing something. Either that or it could be this right here. Effective hit pool. No, that just changes our effective hit pool. That's not a big deal. Anyways, I'm gonna go on. So we have instant leech here. Max frenzy, max endurance charge. And then right here, we're gonna take some more avoidance. Eventually, you should be able to reach max freeze and shock avoidance. Shock avoidance actually comes from Tempest Shield. So you don't really have to worry about specifically getting shock avoidance, but we want freeze avoidance and basically ailment immunity as much as we can get, because that reflect node or reflect modifier is extremely deadly. Yeah, so then we go into our sword wheel. We are taking block and damage. And this node is quite helpful for block enemies. Reduced chance to block sword attacks. Pretty general. We'll gain a little bit more from this build when we go here. We'll have a little bit more spell suppression. But our effective hit pool is pretty good. Fizz max hit. I'm fairly certain I'm configuring something wrong. But for the video, we'll just show you the tree. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. Nothing crazy. The anoint that I'm using is for sovereignty. You can change this depending on your build's needs. One good node for this build, if you don't need any reservation, is Ash, Frost, and Storm for 30% increased effective damaging elements. And another thing that is going to be off from most of the builds that use Critical Strike is increased effect of non-damaging elements you inflict with Critical Strikes. So we're not going to be taking the normal 25% critical strike multiplier to unique enemies. If you look at the critical strike multiplier right now, 25% is not going to change much. So having a 30-30 Scorch on a unique enemy versus plus 25% critical strike multiplier, this is the better option. Accuracy, if you need it, I did, so it was kind of hard to fit that in the build. Anyways, that is the passive tree. I already went over the brittle ground. So we use Whirling Blades to go ahead and get that. If you Whirling Blades back and forth, you'll be able to put Brittle Ground down, giving us better chances to critically strike. Some other weird things about this build is a lot of the time before we get our ramp up going, our Scorch is going to be low. And you might have to wait there for like a second or two until the Scorch refreshes and it starts hitting for that higher number. But eventually, like, if something is tanky enough, you're going to get a 30-30 Scorch on them, and you're going to get all of your ailments, and they're going to start dropping down. So, if they are tanky enough, eventually you're going to start doing serious damage to them. You just have to stick in there for a second. So, it's just kind of like delayed gratification on a couple of these things. The tinctures, the ailments, stuff like that. But as long as you stick in there, you're going to start doing damage. It's just the waiting part that's like, oh, I'm not dealing damage. It's probably because you have like a 5% Scorch that was from a basic attack that had nothing on it, like no tinctures, no unbound, no intimidate, no ambush. But once you get past that, it's going to be fine. It's very button heavy. So if you're not a fan of button heavy builds, I am, Whirling Blades is here on my spacebar. To escape, I have my Flame Dash, which is T. My Ambush is Q. Battle Mage is W. Unbound is E. I'm also hitting S and F for my tinctures. That is just where I like to have my flask buttons. You can, make fun of me if you want to. And then, of course, we have the Vol Molten Shell. We are hitting our Vol Reave. So every button that you see here, aside from the move only, well, I mean, I guess move only is always one of the buttons that you're pressing, but every button here is being used during the build. So if you don't like that, turn away. But if you find gratification in actually pressing and using abilities at like opportune times and making sure that, you're ramping up your damage that way, or maybe even holding back when there's just trash mobs, and then waiting for like the boss or the unique enemy to come up, it's extremely fun to just unload your whole arsenal on it and watch them get popped. Damage is really good for this build. So right here, the configuration is set. Let's see if I'm missing anything. No. So this is for the basic Reave of Refraction. So our normal attack, 46 million when everything is going. And then the Vol Reave, if you start unloading the Vol Reave, 92 million damage. So this is a little bit disingenuous. The reason being is when you hit Vol Reave, it goes around in a circle and randomly targets. So the number that you really want to look at is the regular Reave. Also at 10 stacks, which is what we get after we use Vol Reave. That's the whole reason why Vol Reave is in there. Well, I guess it's not the whole reason. So if you do a no regen map, Vol Reave is really good to get mana back. So that's one other use for it. It's also very useful if there's a bunch of enemies around you. You can kind of clear the screen. Reave of Refraction, though. Once we get up to 10 stacks, it's going to have a 5.5 meteor radius. Really good. It's almost the full screen. You could get more if you just drop blood and sand, but I like damage. So that's 6 million damage right there. Yeah, super tanky. I don't want to be disingenuous with this either. So when we don't have Unbound, this is when you're gonna see your damage drop down to like nothing. When we haven't War Cried recently, we're gonna pretty much have Fortify and Rage up all the time. We're gonna always block, so that's not too bad. We're gonna have our Resonance count up there, so that's not bad. Oh yeah, and then like the Scorch, so like when you hit a crappy Scorch and let's say a really crappy Shock, and this just happens for the duration of it. I wish it would refresh with like the stronger ailment right away, but it doesn't seem to do that. It seems to wait until the duration of the ailment is done, and then it'll start applying the stronger ailment. So you have to wait for a couple of seconds until this goes away, and then you can apply a 50 shock, and then 30 scorches, and then go Unbound, and then War Cry. So you can see how that ramps up really, really, really quickly. But you'll see the drop in damage is pretty noticeable. Yeah, so that is my build, and we have pretty good defenses. Our layers of defenses, health, obviously. We have Life Leech. Instant Life Leech, instant Mana Leech. We have 765 ward when the potion is up. Or the elixir. My voice is going. And then we have Evasion to kind of safeguard when our block doesn't work. We have 2+ max res on our elements, and almost capped off on the chaos res. And then we have Fortify. So it's very tanky. It can do a lot of damage, and I am having fun with it. So I thought I'd share it again and give you the updates that I'm doing. Previously, I was using Nightblade support. I switched over to block-based with a sword, and I don't plan on going back. Anyways, if you like the build, I can probably do a little bit more of an in-depth guide on what I do with it, like early on. But I thought I'd give sort of like intermediate players the update on the build, because a lot of POE players would be able to just hop into it. But if you guys are more interested in like beginner build guides, I can try to set one up for this. Thank you.